Thank you for joining and a warm welcome at this webinar on the EN50600, the European Data Center Standard. This webinar is jointly organized by TUViT and the Dutch Data Center Association. We will talk about why data center standards are key for quality, sustainability, and time to market while maintaining continuous growth in digitalization. I will start with the agenda. We have a welcome, of course, introduction of the speakers. Then we will start with data center trends in the Netherlands, the definition of the EN50600 and the scope. Then Joachim will take over and talk about the classification, the conformance, certification of the EN50600, the outlook, and finally we have an open discussion with the participants and also answer the questions. Now I will ask my fellow presenter Joachim Faulhaber to introduce himself.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joachim Faulhaber. I'm working for TÜV Informationstechnik in Essen, and I'm a product manager for data center evaluation and certification services from TUViT. I will come into detail on my part of the presentation, and thank you very much also from my side for joining the webinar.
Thank you. My name is Stijn Grove. I'm the Managing Director of the Dutch Data Center Association. That's the trade association for data centers in the Netherlands. We have over 35 data center operators, around 70 suppliers in the ecosystem surrounding data centers. And our primary focus as trade association is to make it possible that the industry can grow in a sustainable way. And therefore we do a lot of lobby work, a lot of promotion work, a lot of information sharing about the data center ecosystem. Before we start, some extra information on some house rules. This webinar will be recorded and will be made available online. Same with the presentations, which will be shared after this webinar. You will receive an email with the information when they are published online. There will also be room to answer your questions after the presentations of myself and Joachim. When you have questions, please ask them via our chat channel. You can find that below on the Zoom window. And we will all record them and in the end ask all the questions. Also, please keep your microphone muted during the presentations so that we can present well. So without further, I will start the presentation. And before I add some other people joining, and I will talk about the data center industry in the Netherlands and what we see. That is not very specific for the Netherlands, because I think this is seen everywhere. Because the digital economy is now is the economy. You see that more and more of the things are data driven. The world is rapidly changing, and the last half year we have seen rapid change also because of COVID. We're doing everything different. We can now, by digital means, we can control, analyze, monitor things, to these things also more efficiently. And new business models are starting every day. And with COVID-19, the world is also rapidly changing in terms of the way we work. And some changes are done in a much faster way than before. So you see that, well, the call that we're doing now, previously there weren't that many webinars. Movies are published online via streaming channels instead of via movie centers. But also notaries are able to do contracts via video calls instead of people traveling to their offices. So big changes everywhere. And probably we will see this status for still some months or maybe a year while we're still having COVID. What we also see is that you see that more and more people are working from home, are learning from home, are recreating from home. And you see that with countries that have a robust digital infrastructure are able to continue their economy, their society for what it's worth, and for most of it. What we see is that there's a lot of data traffic increase still. It's not as rapid as in March, but you still see an increase in traffic. And we see double-digit traffic. The data centers, by the way, only saw 1 to 4% rise in energy use, while everybody was working from home, everybody was learning from home. And if you look at the prospects also of our industry in terms of will the industry grow and will it has positive growth numbers, we still see a lot of people who think we're still in a good position as an industry, as a data center industry. So the digital economy is becoming more and more the economy. This is one of the models that we made. It's called the digital economy model, and you see that the green part is the digital infrastructure, and that's basically the foundation for everything that we do. And data centers are the one of the most important parts of that foundation, together with networks, cloud and hosting providers, and SaaS providers. And those interact with all the blue parts, which is all the different sectors in the economy, which are themselves changing into digital sectors. The growth is inevitable, and we see that constantly. As a foundation, we centralize the IT equipment, we centralize all the different services in our facilities. The cloud is in our facilities, is on the ground and in our facilities. And this growth is enormous. We're constantly outpacing other economies, other sectors. And but when you look at sort of like the energy use, by concentrating into larger data centers and by moving applications towards the cloud, we have seen, and these are the numbers of the International Energy Agency, that the energy use overall by data centers have been quite stable for the last 10 years. So there has only been an increase in data center energy use by 1 to 5%. So that's a remarkable achievement. And that also shows the need for data centers, because the data centers bring us efficiency. But it also brings the need for standards, because without standards, we couldn't have done this. And this is becoming more and more important, because if you look at all the challenges that we're facing, and especially the energy transition, the climate change that we're seeing, we need to also be more efficient. We need to be more green, and therefore we need to monitor, we need to analyze, we need to improve. And by doing so, we need basic agreements, we need standards to be able to do all these things. And this is why it's becoming so important, and this is why we also have the EN50600. And by that, I will start with the standards overview. If you look at data center standards, we have a lot. Sometimes I joke that data centers sometimes look like Korean generals. They have so many medals, they have so many certifications. It's quite funny to see that some data centers have over 50 certifications. But I think it's important to also show data is becoming so valuable. So you have to also explain to your customers that you're doing things in an accountable way, in a way which is seen as the standard. So there are a lot on compliancy, on facility, on technology, on sustainability. So we see more and more standards in how we evolve. As a young industry, we have seen a lot of changes in the last 20 years. And we also seen a lot of standards. The 5600 is a European standard to accommodate a lot of these standards and to bring it more normalized. It's the next step of what we have been talking about in country. We have now moved it into a European way, and it's built up in lots of different modules. So we have a building construction module, a power distribution module, environmental control module, telecommunications cabling infrastructure module, security model, and a management and operations model. And if you look at all these modules, they have all these sub-modules in which they further explain the details around these modules, and KPIs. So KPIs about the PUE, the renewable energy factor, which is becoming more and more important, but also the energy reuse, the cooling efficiency. So all these KPIs important for also showing governments what we are doing and doing it in a standard way. The last two modules are the energy management and environmental sustainability module, which are recommended practices. The EN50600 represents the first European standard, which is quite unique, that uses an approach to make comprehensive specifications for new construction and operations for data centers. It defines the requirements for construction, power supply, air conditioning, ventilation, cabling, security, and defines the criteria for operation of the data center. It's created by CENELEC, which is the European Committee for Electronic Technical Standardization, and it offers various degrees of freedom and can do also an extent to understood as a modular system, like I explained, with all the separate modules. First and foremost, EN50600 represents a standard that is applicable during the construction of new data centers. It also defines the assessment reports and analyses that are necessary in advance of the design and construction work. Topics outside of the scope of this series are the selection of IT and telecom equipment, software, and associated configuration issues. These are really outside the scope. The analysis of overall service availability, also outside the scope, and the EMC and safety requirements are also not covered in this standard. And we now move over to the classification, and there I would like to give the word and the presentation over to Joachim. I will stop sharing my presentation, and if you can take over.
Okay, I will try.
Yes, we will see the presentation now.
All right.
And before Joachim starts, I can also say, if you have any questions, please use the chat window to ask these questions.
Yes. So, Steen, you have been very quick, like a road runner. So I'm still relaxing here now. Okay, my part is to tell you something about the EN50600 from the certification body perspective. I am heading a team of 25 people at TÜV Informationstechnik, And about 50% of these people are employed directly by TÜV at TÜViT. And the other 50% are hand-picked experts from the TÜV North Corporation. And the TÜV North Corporation, I think in the Netherlands, it's well known. It's a testing and inspection company with 14,000 employees around the world. So I have one slide to give you a short introduction to TÜV Informationstechnik. The image you see here is from our seminar corridor showing our certificates of which have been awarded to TUViT. And so these are from institutions in different countries as well as authorities. And this should show our experience and knowledge in different fields. What we do is with 180 employees to have evaluations, assessments, testing of IT security equipment like software and hardware. And we do this not only in Germany, but also around the world. And the certificates you see here, these are well, national and international accreditations. Our business areas is the IT infrastructure, security and quality. And one branch is data center assessments and certifications. And we do this because we have also 3 people engaged in the national working group of EN50600 here in Germany. And 2 of the 3 people are even editors of parts of the EN50600. And to my knowledge, we have the biggest part in all the members in the working group in order to support the working group with writing also parts of the standard. Okay, my talk today is to explain a little bit the nature of the EN50600, its classification system, the progress the standard itself takes in the future, and how do we evaluate and issue a certificate for a data center. Let's start with the nature. Here's some text from the EN50600-1. And here it is said, who is addressed by the EN50600? And it says the parties include owners, facility managers, project managers, consultants, suppliers, installers, maintainers. But the question is, for us, where are the evaluators and the inspection teams? They are not mentioned here. And perhaps the reason for that is, and I can try to solve the question, is that we have to look, well, how has a standard to be written? And this, here again, there is a standard for writing a standard, that is the ISO 17007. And it says that is a guidance for drafting normative documents suitable for use for conformity assessments. And if you look to this standard, there are 3 key features. which should be applied when you compile your own standard. The first is, of course, separation of the requirements and specifications from the evaluation scheme itself. Second, the description should be neutral, consistent, and comprehensible for all parties. That is, for the manufacturers, for the users, and even for the evaluators. And at the end, if you want to issue a certificate based on such a standard, then these certificates must be comparable. And if we look now to the EN50600, for the first minute here, I have to say there is no evaluation scheme included in the EN50600. There is no spot, no location in the EN50600 series which tells an evaluator or an assessment institution how to assess all the requirements. And that is the first problem. There is no evaluation scheme. Then concerning neutral, consistent, comprehensible, well, I put it to your opinion. Decide by yourself whether you think that it is easy to read, easy to understand, or easy to interpret. And concerning the assessments, which should be comparable, well, it's a pity, but I have to say they differ, these assessments, depending on the evaluation body who performs such assessments. Well, therefore, and it's perhaps one time in a year that our convener of the EN50600 says again and again that this standard is designed as a guideline and not as an assessment basis. And that is very important. Although, if we look to the writing of the EN50600, first of all, it has a typical setup of a standard. So it has the typical clauses used, for example, the conformity clause, or which abbreviations are used, which standards are referenced, and then several chapters about the requirements. So the setup is for a standard. And within the writing, you will find recommendations for the customers. And these recommendations are not mandatory in the certification process itself. But it has also requirements defined, and these requirements have to be fulfilled for the certification. But, and there's something strange in that, and there's something special, and these are conditional requirements. These conditional requirements are based on customer risk assessments. And that is the point which makes the challenge for the auditors and which makes it difficult from institution to institution or from evaluation body to evaluation body to come to the same assessments so that they are comparable. That is the big challenge in that. Here's another slide Steen has already showed to you in his slides, the whole collection of the EN50600 standards. Here, once again, you saw 4 major parts, which are subdivided in a series of standards. And the first part is defines the general concepts and describes a little bit the usage of the whole series. The second part deals with the data center design, from the construction over the electrical and the mechanical system to the cabling and the security systems. And part 3 is about management and operation of the data centers. The part 4 mainly addresses key performance indicators for energy efficiency. And you see there are still missing parts of it, but on the 4-8 and 9, they are coming next year. And concerning the 4-4 and 5, they have a close link to some ISO standards with the same subjects. And concerning the 4-4 and 4-5, these key performance indicators have a strong relationship to the IT itself, and therefore it has been withdrawn in the EN50600. And beside that, you find on the left-hand side of the slide some technical reports which are helping documents at the end. So for certification, which parts are important for certification? This can be easily shown. I put it into blue. These are the parts which are relevant for certification of a data center. That is the part 1, the whole part 2, and the part 3. So how do we perform these assessments? First of all, if you look to these parts or the series of the EN50600, this slide should illustrate the number of pages of each of the standard parts. And you see that these are nearly 40 to 50 pages, and that is a lot of stuff to read. At the end, if you sum it up, then you're coming to 351 pages of standards which are relevant for such an assessment. Now, if you remember that the ISO 17077 requires an evaluation scheme to perform these assessments, we decided as an inspection and testing company to compile our own criteria catalog, which should cover all the requirements of the EN50600. And we do our job since 2001 in assessing data centers or mission critical infrastructure of data centers. And we call our service TSI, and TSI stands for Trusted Site Infrastructure. And TSI defines a methodology how to do these certifications, these assessments, and therefore we called it TSI EN50600. And this is our criteria catalog, which is relatively compact, comprehensive. It's streamlined requirements. And these are our interpretations as an inspection company on the EN50600 requirements. And this booklet is our basis for the assessment. And here we have 39 pages. If we look inside this criteria catalog, you see a listing of the requirements with a numbering scheme and with some explanations to that. And each of these requirements have to be fulfilled in order to get a certificate. The booklet or the criteria catalog is divided into several sections dealing with criteria or requirements on the environment, on the construction, on the fire protection, on the security, on cabling, on the power supply system, on the air conditioning and ventilation, on the organization concerning facility management, and documentation, which describes which documents are required in order to, or which have to be provided for such a certification. Okay, that's concerning the EN50600 and its nature. For us, the EN50600 is a guideline. Now to the classification system. Well, if we look to the scope, here we have also a chapter in the 5600-1. And in this chapter, we are told that it describes the general aspects, that it specifies a classification system upon availability, security, and energy efficiency, and describes the general design principles. And the general design principles deal with the support of energy efficiency, electromagnetic interference, and support for operational excellence. EN50600 knows 3 classification systems. The most prominent of this is the availability class. The EN50600 defines 4 availability classes for the electrical system, for the mechanical system, and for the cabling structure. In addition to that, it defines protection classes. That is on the construction part, more or less. And the protection classes differ. I will explain on the next slides. The protection classes for unauthorized access are set up in a way like an onion skin. This has been defined in the first edition of the EN50600, but now on the new release of the 2-1, which deals with the construction, it opens a new possibility which says, okay, you can use an onion skin principle on that, or you can use a castle principle, which means that you have one hardening of a protection border and building up a shelter for your technical staff and for the IT staff. And last but not least, it defines granularity levels for the measurement preparations to get input for energy efficiency decisions. And the EN50600 also defines 3 different granularity levels. I want to go into detail on these 3 classification systems. But before I do that, I just want to explain in which case is a conformance to the EN50600 given. First of all, you have to provide a business risk analysis. You have you have to decide by yourself for availability class. You have to choose a protection class and energy efficiency enablement level. These are these three granularity levels on measuring, on measurement of energy in the data center itself. Furthermore, design processes shall be applied, but there is a note that this is not mandatory for assessments of existing data centers. And the design principles shall be applied. Now, availability classes. We have different grades of availability which are used in the electrical system, mechanical and cabling system. And for a major understanding, here I want to show you the 4 different approaches on the availability classes. Starting with availability class 1, this is a single path layout. Just with no redundancy, you have a single path and 1 component. On availability class 2, once again, you have a single path layout, but you have redundancy on the components. Availability class 3 is set up in a way that you even can do maintenance during operation. And here you have to provide multi-paths, at least 2. And at least in one of the paths, you have to use redundant components. And availability class 4 defines a multi-path design and fault tolerance, except during maintenance. And this means at least you have 2 paths, and on each path you have a component. That is a 2N redundant system. These are the availability classes and apply in the same way to the mechanical system as well as the cabling system. Protection classes, the EN50600 distinguishes 3 different kinds of protection classes. The most prominent one is the protection class for unauthorized access. And it defines 4 protection classes, and you have to implement at least 3 of them. And in the part for the electrical system and in the part for the mechanical system, they define the requirements regarding their spaces concerning the protection class unauthorized access. And there are 2 other kinds of protection classes. One of the protection classes deals with internal environmental events like fire, electromagnetic interference, vibration, flooding, gas, and dust. And the other one with the external environmental events of the same kind, at least. From the very beginning, the protection class for unauthorized access has been well defined in the EN50600 2-5. The other ones, well, they are only defined rudimentary, and even now on the update, on the new release of the 2-5, they distinguish the protection classes in a way that they say, okay, you have to do nothing, or the next higher protection class is to say you have to have sensors that you become aware of any problem. And the next higher protection class is that it says you have to mitigate it in some way by constructional constructional measures, for example. And the last classification system is the granularity level for energy efficiency enablement. And here 3 levels are defined. A very simple one is level 1, which provides general information for the entire data center. Level 2 is a grid of metering devices at several locations in the data center. And level 3 is up to the sockets that you can, at every spot, you can measure your energy consumption. There is also an image in the standard, and I put it here on this slide in order to explain it or to visualize it a little bit. And you see here the feeding of the energy, and here you have your first spots where you have to measure your energy. And this here is granularity level 1. And then within the building, you have a distribution system of your energy path. And within this distribution system, you have also to measure the energy. If you do that, you are at the granularity level 2. And if you go down up to each of the sockets, then you have a granularity level 3. These are the 3 classification systems. So what is coming next on the EN50600? Well, there is a lot of work in the part 3 and the part 4. We have updated the part 2-1, 2-2, 2-3, and 2-5. We are waiting on the final of the 2-4 for the next release. But there's a lot of work also in the part data center operation, as well as in the energy efficiency part concerning the key PIs. And one colleague of mine, Mark Wilkins, I think he is also in the webinar. He is working on the 4-8 and 4-9. That is the intrinsic development of the EN50600. But there's one other interesting aspect on that, and that is that the EN50600 goes international. It becomes an ISO standard. The special working group of ISO in GTC1, the SC39, has decided to take the EN50600 series to international level. And now we are working on the ISO standard. And there are corresponding ISO standards in development to each of the EN50600 parts of the standard. And I expect the first ISO standards in a final version next year. Okay, and now to my last part. That is on evaluation and certification process. I want to explain a little bit the mechanics on that. And first of all, let me say, sometimes customers say, hey, I have a data center and I have 3,000 euros. You can provide me with a certificate. And we always say, well, okay, it's not drawing a certificate. It's much more of doing and assessing behind the scenes. And what it needs and how many parties are involved, I want to illustrate with this image. And well, at the very beginning is that there are some providers in the market, for example, colocation providers, and they claim some properties of their data center. They say, okay, my data center is high available. And on the other side, you have the customers, the tenants who want to rent space in this colocation data center. And well, at the end, the customer has to trust what the provider says. But what does it mean to be high available? Of course, like in service level agreements, you can put a figure to that, like I'm available 99.999% per year. Or you can say, if the data center follows up best practices, how to generate high availability, and if this is written in some document which is accepted broadly in the experts world, then you can check whether these best practices and requirements have been followed in such a colocation data center. And it makes sense to have this written down in some paper which is coming from the industry or some lobby group, or even better, if it is generated by a standards organization like the EN50600. And now the whole mechanics work in this way, that it needs some party which is unbiased and neutral. I'm looking for my mouse. It's gone. Sorry about that. You see in the middle, the evaluation body. This should be a company or an institution which has auditors, and these auditors check whether the requirements written in the standard have been followed up in the data center. And they write an evaluation report. This evaluation report is sent to a certification body. And now, in order to create a maximum of trust, you have the 4I principle. The certification body is independent from the evaluation body. And the evaluation body has to perform its assessment according to another standard, which is the ISO 17025. And the certification body checks whether the evaluation body is working this way. And once again, the certification body, as in our case, we are tested and checked by an accreditation body. Each country has a national accreditation body. In Germany, it is the DAX. And they test us according to the 17065. And this is the whole mechanic behind all the certification and evaluation process. So there are a lot of parties involved in that to create a maximum of trust. How does it work for the customer who likes to acquire a certificate? Well, first of all, we need a whole set of documentation of the data center, which are floor plans, schematics, calculations, explanations, concept descriptions, data sheets. They have all to be provided, and which will be analyzed and reviewed in the first step for the whole certification process. With the document set, we prepare also the audit and the inspection on site. For data center certification, this is a collection of different crafts and needs different experts. So typically on the bigger data center, we involve 4 to 5 people. And for the inspection, there are 4 people coming on site and check for 1 to 2 days separately, independently from each other, their aspects. For example, the electrical engineer is assessing on site the electrical system, the mechanical engineer is inspecting the mechanical system this way. Okay, after that, we have to compile an evaluation report, and this evaluation report will be sent to the certification body. The certification body decides on providing and issuing the certificate or not, if not all of the requirements are fulfilled. If there are minor deviations and minor findings, in that case, the certification body agrees to issue the certificate, but the certification body gives 6 months to fix these findings, and then there is a post-audit after 6 months of that. Term of the certificate. The certificate is valid for 2 years. Starts with an initial certification audit. If there are findings, minor findings, then there is the post-audit after 6 months. And our customers can apply for a recertification in the earliest stage, 18 months after the first initial certification audit. And then the next certificate also is valid for 2 years. So that's it, what I want to tell you. And here are some contact persons. If you have perhaps in the future some questions, we are happy to answer them. Thank you very much. Steen?
Thank you. If you can stop sharing your screen, then I take over again. Yes, thank you.
Oh, no.
Oh.
It's a problem with my mouse.
Okay. Well, at this moment, yeah. No.
Yeah, give me some time. I have to check whether I can do it in another way.
Yeah, I see that it works. Okay. Good. Then we'll go over to the questions. Are there any questions? I've seen in the chat window there hasn't been any questions, so that must be that there was a very good presentation. So thank you very much, Joachim. But I have some questions. if you look at the EN50600, Joachim, is there, how do you see the take-up now? Are many companies already using it? How do you see it growing also in Europe in terms of certification?
Yes. Well, we started certifying data centers with our own program, that is the TSI standard. We call it TSI standard. We do that for 19 years now. And when we have been involved in the EN50600 working on a new European standard, we decided to adopt the EN50600 to our criteria catalog. And we see, starting in 2016, that at the very beginning, there has been only very, very few inquiries on the EN50600. But today, we see in Germany, but also all over Europe, we have in different parts in Europe certification projects. And I would say that the demand on it increases, well, might be to 10 up to 15%.
Okay, so that's, do you see also a change in the last couple of months or last 3/4 of a year? Is it becoming more important? Are people now having time for it, or how do you see that?
Well, you mentioned COVID, and well, these are two sides of a coin. On the one hand, yes, there is a little bit more interest in that because everybody knows how important the data centers are, especially in these times. On the other hand, site inspections become very difficult for us because we are not allowed to go in all of the data centers, which is very important on the site inspection. We are visiting each of the technical rooms. And that is the problem now for us in COVID times. But nevertheless, I can tell you that these projects are not stopped. They are only postponed.
Okay, okay. There are some questions now in the chat window, so I will ask them to you also. Is there any training available like the TSI standard training? So is there any training available for the TSI standard, like the TSI standard training?
There is. We offer different workshops specialized on EN50600, but also to our whole methodology, and we call it the TSI Professional. And this is a 2.5-day training on our criteria catalog as well as on our processes to dig deep into the backstage of our work in the certification body and in the evaluation body.
Okay, very good. And I think it's good if we can, in the end, provide you some links to that training, but we will do that afterwards. Another question, are the availability levels on power and cooling aligned with the uptime and the TR942?
More or less. Of course, there are some slight differences, but more or less it's very comparable. At the end, one of the other well, I can't say standard, but the requirements from the uptime or the TIA 942. Well, the TIA 942 is a standard, yes, but concerning the mission critical infrastructure, it's not part of the standard itself. It's only an appendix in the TIA 942. So you have to handle it a little bit differently from a certification point of view. But nevertheless, in detail, there are some differences. But from a bird's point of view, I would say it's very similar.
Okay. All right. Another question. Are you working together with OCP in the US to fix standards in the power chain connectivity? So the Open Compute project?
No.
No. So there's no working together there.
No contact right now with them.
Is that something that you or that there is looking? Are they looking at it at the Open Compute project in general in terms of that?
There have been no efforts in the past right now on that.
Okay.
All right. Because open computing, to my understanding, it's much more related to the IT background than to the mission critical infrastructure background. And our major work is on the mission critical infrastructure.
Okay. Is the TSI 5600 criteria catalog available for purchasing?
In one special way, because this is a listing of requirements, and we think that it needs, of course, also some explanations and how to deal with this criteria catalog and how to adopt it. Therefore, we provide a workshop for the TSI EN50600 criteria catalog. And this workshop is up to the customer, whether there are 2 or 10 people who want to participate to the workshop. It's always the same price. And during the workshop, you get as a handout these TSI EN50600 criteria catalog.
Okay. Another question, which data center services are provided by TUViT? That's a very broad question, but...
Yeah. Well, we try to accompany our customer during the whole life cycle of a data center. So our very first offers are at the stage where the first ideas of a new data center are created. So there are customers who are asking us to check their first ideas. Then typically we are asked for such a workshop of the TSI EN50600 or the TSI standard. But really big work is, or we are facing a big work when the customer asks us to analyze and to check their design of the new data center. So we do that on the design documents, and at the very end of this process, we have checked all of the plans provided according to the criteria, whether each of the criteria is fulfilled. And if it is not fulfilled, we describe it in our evaluation report on that, so that there can be some modifications on the plans for the engineering company, for example, before they start building. For the planning phase, we provide this service with a conformity assessment report. And during the construction, we offer quality gates. Sometimes you start up with the construction, you have your design plans, and suddenly you have to decide to make some modifications on the construction ground itself. And now there's some uncertainty at the customer, and he says, oh, well, we have the confirmation from TUViT that we have to construct it this way in the design plans. And now we see during the construction phase that we have to change something. Does this influence our certificate later? And therefore, for this kind of questions, we offer such quality gates where the experts are coming to the construction site and decide on site and give some recommendations, so that so that the certification can be after, at the very end, that the certification can be finished successfully. And then if the data center has been constructed, we offer let me see, now I'm looking for the word, the testing of the whole facilities. We do the quality control on that. And after that, and when the IT has been settled on the IT space and the data center has come into operation, then we offer the certification of the data center.
Okay, thank you very much. Another totally different question. Is there already a list of connectivity equipment, connectors, cables, which are approved for the connectivity in a data center in terms of the EN50600 or following the EN50600? Is it in that detail already?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Is there already some references regarding the people who have attended the course?
Concerning the TSI professional?
Exactly.
Yes, well, everybody, of course, is invited to visit our website. Here we have explained in some detail all our services, as well as those people who have successfully attended the TSI professional training. So they can use the certificate to be a TSI professional. And we also are working with a lot of engineering bureaus and companies, and we have a partnership program, and also our partners are listed on our website.
So is people that are able to do the course, are they also, is there a special course to do actually the certification themselves in the end?
No.
No, that's only an aggregated body like TUViT.
Yes, that is, I would call it an advantage because I know that there are other institutions in the market who offer also evaluation and certification, and they do, a lot of them do it with freelancers. And these freelancers are coming once again from such engineering bureaus and data center design companies. And here there is the question whether they are really unbiased and neutral. That's the problem in that. So therefore we say all the experts from our side are coming from the company itself, and they are employed in the company.
Okay, in terms of references, I see in the chat window that if there's any questions, also somebody who already attended the course, Hans from Zentris, he's able to also provide some info as a reference. He highly recommends it, so strongly recommends it, so that's positive news. He also has a question in terms of are you working together with the Commission for Data Center Standards, and how does TUViT keep the certification up to date? Because it's a standard that's constantly in development.
Sure, of course. Well, one of our goal has been always with our TSI standard catalog, as well as with the TSI EN50600 criteria catalog, to be state of the art. So therefore, in the past, we make updates on our criteria catalog every 2 or 3 years. And for the EN50600, because there had been updates on parts of the EN50600, we provided this year the version 2.0 of the criteria catalog, covering all actual criteria, all actual standards in the EN50600.
Okay, another question. In terms of certification for a new data center, does EN50600 give a design certification before construction, or separate from global certification?
Well, we don't give a certificate for blueprints. I don't know whether you know that there has been a lot of discussion also in the States with the uptime, with all the design certifications. And to my knowledge, they've withdrawn it in the States, but they do it still internationally. We do not offer a certificate for the design, because we have made the experience that a lot of design certificates are not valid after the data center has been constructed, because it has been just constructed differently to the design documents. And well, unfortunately, there are some customers who make some advertisement with their design certificate, although there is a big gap between the design plans and the really constructed facility.
Okay. Some other questions that I had. What will happen if the EN50600 after the ISO 22237 gets published?
Well, of course, there is, first of all, we have two different standard organizations. That is the CENELAC as a European standard organization, and the ISO as the international. I have followed up what happened on the British standard 17799, which becomes the ISO 27001. And well, there has been a time where they coexist, both systems. And after that, the national standard changed to the ISO standard. So I suppose that the EN, because there's a lot of development, it's very vital with all the people in Europe, that there will be a lot of more development in the EN50600, and that for years or even decades, both systems will coexist and will take advantages from each other. But
okay, and yeah. Sorry?
So far, what I can see is that all the discussions on the new ISO standards, they are very, very close to the EN50600 standard parts. So there are not major differences right now.
Okay. And the final question that I have, and I'm very happy about the lots of questions on the chat channel, but the final also very blunt question: what does a certification cost for?
Yeah, well, of course, this depends on the size of the data center. Whether we speak of a server room, which only has 100 square meters, or whether we speak of a hyperscale data center with 50,000 square meters, for example. And it depends on the availability class chosen, because the higher the availability class, the more complex is the electrical and the mechanical system, and it takes much more time to do the assessment on that. Nevertheless, just to give you a figure on that, I would say it starts about 14 to 15,000 euros and ends up at 60 to 70,000 euros.
Okay. Well, these are sort of like you're mentioning a number, which is good. So thank you very much. That was my last question. Are there any final questions or final remarks? Yeah, I see here another question. What's the price for the TSI professional training exam and certification?
I have to ask Karim. Karim, can you answer the question?
Could you repeat what is the price for TSI?
TSI professional
training exam and certification.
So for the online training, we're currently developing an online platform to conduct the training, and the price would be at the moment 2,500 euros.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Per person.
No, I think that was it. I think we're
Yes.
and that includes exam. A final question on that.
Yes, the exam is included in the price.
Perfect. Okay. Well, that was a very thank you for that. But yeah, then I'm sort of like ending the presentation. One thing, we have as DDA also compiled a list, which is in the Netherlands, a standard publication, standards guide, which is an overview of all the standards in data centers, including the EN50600 in general, but also how the Dutch standards on electricity, on cooling, relate to the EN50600. So I think there's a lot of detail in there, especially on the Dutch market. There's a lot of info in there, and in general, it's free to download. So we've put a link there. I can, we will also provide the information afterwards. So that is something I can recommend, and also in regarding to other documentations on our website. Therefore, we're ending this webinar. Thank you, Joachim, for your knowledge on this subject and answering the questions. Thank you very much, everybody who attended. There was a lot of attendance during the webinar, so I'm very happy about that. And good questions. If there are any questions afterwards that you think of, you can always drop us an email, and we're happy to answer that. And on that one, I would like to thank you very much for attending, and have a good evening, and hope to see you soon. Thank you very much.
A lot of thanks also from my side. Thank you for attending, and thank you for leading in such professional way through the webinar. Steen, thank you very much. And for organizing this webinar. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye. Thank you very much.